This is going to be the final exam review for the College Algebra Corequisite course. So let's get started. We have problem number 1, multiply and simplify. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to start with the coefficients. Negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. And then for the letters that are the same, we're going to add their powers. Remember, when you multiply variables, you have to add their powers. So 4 plus 3 is 7, m to the 7th. Z to the 4 plus 2 is 6, and we're done with number 1. Number 2, simplify. And the first thing I notice is that this exponent outside the parentheses is negative. So the first step that I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the fraction over, and that'll make the 6 positive. Notice that I'm not changing anything inside the parentheses except that I'm flipping the fraction over. And that is a property of exponents that says if you have an entire fraction to a negative power, if you flip the fraction, it makes the exponent positive. Now, the next step is I'm going to reduce the 24 and 18, and any variables that have negative exponents, I'm going to make them positive. All right, so here we go. Next step, to do 24 over 18 reduced, I am going to use the handy dandy calculator because it has the ability to reduce fractions for me to lowest terms. And that's going to be 4/3. And then I notice x to the negative 4 in the top. So if I bring him to the bottom, it makes him positive. Now notice there is also an x already down in the bottom, so I'm going to leave him down in the bottom. There is a y up top, and the y to the negative 2, I'm going to bring him up, and that'll make him positive. Now these are multiplied, top and bottom. And so now I can simplify by combining my factors. So in the numerator, we're going to have 4y to the 3rd, because y to the 1 times y squared is y to the 3rd. And we're going to have x to the 5th, because x to the 4 times x to the 1 is x to the 5. And now everything inside the parentheses is reduced to lowest terms, simplified completely. And so now I can deal with the 6. The exponent of 6 is going to distribute to every factor in the parentheses. So that will be 4 to the 6th, y to the 3 times 6, which is 18, 3 to the 6th, x to the 5 times 6, which is 30. Technically, you could stop here, or you can go ahead and evaluate 4 to the 6th and 3 to the 6th. But I believe those are going to be rather large. Let's see. 4 to the 6th, 4096. That's rather large. So what I'm going to say is, I'm going to say if you want to make that 4096, go ahead. If you want to just leave it 4 to the 6th power, that's fine with me. So this answer is acceptable. Or you could have 4096 y to the 18th over whatever 3 to the 6th is. 3 to the 6th, 729. X to the 30th. This answer would also be acceptable. Number 3, we're going to solve the equation for x. The first thing I notice is I have parentheses that I need to get rid of, so I'm going to distribute the 4. So I'm going to have 9x minus 12x minus 8 equals negative 23 minus 6x. And then the next step is to get all of the x's together on one side and all of the constants together on the other side. So I know that negative 9 and negative 12 is negative 21x. The negative 6x comes over and makes a plus 6x. The negative 8 becomes positive 8 when I bring it over. And I've got minus 23. And so then I need to combine like terms one more time. Negative 21 plus 6 is negative 15. 8 minus 23, that's negative 15. And then to finish it off, we're going to divide both sides by negative 15. And we get a solution of 1. Now you can plug that back in and check it if you want to, but it's not required. Next, we're going to solve and graph the inequality. Notice it says solve and graph and interval notation. So there's 3 parts to this answer. And the first step is to get rid of those parentheses. So that's going to give me 12x plus 6 minus 20 less than or equal to 9x plus 1. And if I combine like terms, 6 minus 20 is negative 14 less than or equal to 9x plus 1. And then we need to get all of our x's together and all of our constants together. So we're going to have 12x. Now that 9x is going to become negative when he comes over. Less than or equal to. That 14 will become positive when I bring it over. And combine like terms. 12 minus 9 is 3x. 14 and 1 is 15. Divide both sides by 3. X is less than or equal to 5. Now that is the solution. That's the solve part. Now for the graph part. Since we have a less than or equal to, that's going to give us a solid dot at 5. And we're going to shade to the left because x is less than or equal to 5 means everything to the left of 5. And did you catch that? That it's a solid dot because we have less than or equal to. Now for the interval notation, once you've got the shading, we can see that this shading is going to start on the left at negative infinity because it will shade forever to the left, but it will stop at 5, and we use a bracket because we used a solid dot. The bracket says 5 including 5, up to 5 and including 5. And that's all 3 pieces done. Next, number 5, we have an absolute value inequality. And so the way we do these, we say if it's true, we split it in 2. And by if it's true, I mean positive stuff is less than 6. Yes, there is some positive stuff less than 6. That is true. So we're going to split it in 2. 8x plus 3 less than 6. And now this word is important because it's going to determine whether we have a union or an intersection. And the way we know that it's and is because it is less than to start with. If it was greater than, then that would be an or. So we're going to say and 8x plus 3 is greater than negative 6. Notice that when you split it the second time, you have to change the inequality and the sign. And then we're going to solve for x 2 times. 8x less than. 6 minus 3 is 3. And divide both sides by 8. We get x is less than 3/8. And is an intersection, okay? Bringing the 3 over, we're going to get 8x is greater than -9. Remember that 3 becomes negative. -6 and -3 is -9. Divide both sides by 8. X is greater than -9/8. So on our number line, okay, that's the solution. Now for the graph, we're going to say -9/8 is where the shading will start, and +3/8 is where the shading will end. And we're going to shade everything in between. And means intersection, which means you're going to have shading between the two. Okay, also because x is greater than -9/8 means shade to the right of -9/8, but x is less than 3/8 means everything to the left of 3/8. Now the last thing we need is we need the interval notation for this solution, and that's going to be super easy. We're going to have a parenthesis at -9/8, and we're going to shade up to 3/8 and close it. Again, we're using parentheses because we used open circles. And why did we use open circles? Because we had strictly less than. If it has the equal to, it would be a solid dot and then a bracket corresponding on the interval notation. Okay, and if you need to review those features, go and review those. Number 5 is done. Number 6, circle whether the following is a function or not, then state the domain written in interval notation. Okay, so this is a rational function, which means that it is a function. So yes, it is a function, and we know that when there's a variable in the denominator, there's going to be a restriction. So we're going to take the denominator and we're going to say, hey, that cannot be 0. Remember, you cannot divide by 0, so the denominator cannot be 0. And then if I solve this for x, I'll know what x can't be. Moving the 5 over, we see that x cannot be -5. That is the only number that x cannot be. X can be anything else, just not -5. And so if we were to look at that on a number line, I realize it doesn't say graph, but if I were to look at this on a number line, at -5, you would have an open circle, which says that that value does not exist, but any other value does exist. So there's what the shading would look like on a number line, and that's going to help us to get our interval notation, okay? Remember, if you have the number line, you simply look at the shading from left to right, and that gives your interval notation. So this shading starts at -infinity, and it goes all the way up to -5, but -5 is not included, so we use a parenthesis. And then we use a union symbol because there's more shading, okay? So the shading picks up on the other side of -5 and keeps going to infinity. This is the way the domain looks in interval notation, okay? Now, just for a treat, if it said set notation, that would be the set of all x such that x cannot be -5. I believe that answer would actually be easier to come up with since we already know that x cannot be -5. But it didn't ask for set notation, it asked for interval notation. But there's set notation if you wanted to see it. And then I'm going to get rid of it. All right, number 7, determine whether the graph is the graph of a function and then state the domain and the range in interval notation. So if we look at this graph, if we want to know if it's a function, it has to pass the vertical line test. And the vertical line test says if you can draw a vertical line that touches your graph more than one time, it is not a function. Okay, now listen, touching's allowed, but only once. If a vertical line touches more than one time, it is not a function. So a function? No, this is not a function. And we can get the domain and the range. So the domain is from left to right. We can see that this graph is going to go forever to the left. So the domain is going to start at minus infinity. But it looks like this graph stops at -2. And since it's parabolic, it's going to have a vertex, and that probably will include -2. So we're going to use a bracket because it looks like -2 is included. That will be a point on the graph. And do you see that you look at the x-axis when you're getting your domain values? Up to -2. So there's your domain. Now the range is from bottom to top. So do you see as this parabola goes back to the left, it's also sinking down. And the farther left it goes, the farther down it's going to go. Eventually it will go down to minus infinity. And if you look at as it goes to the left on top, it's also creeping up forever. And so the range will increase forever. So our range is going to be everything from minus infinity to infinity, because if you allow this graph to continue to the left forever, it will get wider and wider and wider up and down and eventually go to infinity. And that's it for number 7. Number 8, find the function values. We want to find f of -2 for this function. Now that is a plug and play problem. So we're going to replace every x with -2. And when you substitute -2 in for the x's, it needs to go in parentheses. And then to work that out, instead of doing this manually, I recommend doing it electronically. So much easier to input this with the calculator and let it do the manual labor for you. Okay, so look at what I've got. 4 -2 squared plus 3 times -2. You can input it all at one time on the calculator, and it will do the arithmetic for you. The order of operations, the arithmetic, all done for you if you know how to input it in the calculator correctly. So the answer is 10. Now, for number 9, it says f of a minus 2. And since this is a binomial that we're going to be substituting, we can't use the calculator. F of a minus 2 is 4 times a minus 2 squared plus 3 times a minus 2. Now I'm going to have to know the order of operations here, which says exponents before multiplication. So this is going to be 4 times a minus 2 times a minus 2. Remember, anything squared means times it by itself. Plus, and then this 3 can go ahead and distribute 3a minus 6. So we're going to have to do the FOIL method with the a minus 2's. All right, so that's going to give me a times a is a squared On the outside is a minus 2a. On the inside is a minus 2a. Last but not least is a positive 4 plus 3a minus 6. And then the 4 is going to need to distribute. 4a squared minus 8a minus 8a plus 16 plus 3a minus 6. And then the last step is to combine like terms. So we're going to have 4a squared minus 8, and minus 8 is minus 16. And then plus 3 would be minus 13a. And then we have 16 minus 6, which is 10. And there's number 9 done. Number 10, determine the slope and the y-intercept. Written as ordered pairs. Notice it says must show work. So if I'm going to find the x and y intercepts, what I'm going to do is make a little table of values where I'm going to let x be 0 one time. That will find the y-intercept. And then I'm going to let y be 0, and that'll find the x-intercept. All right, here's showing our work. Letting x be 0 means to replace x with 0, and 2 times 0 is 0, and 0 minus 3y is just minus 3y. And then if I divide by negative 3, I'm going to have my y-intercept. Okay, one down, one to go. Now we're going to let y be 0. And 3 times 0 is 0. And 2x minus 0 is just 2x. And then if I divide both sides by 2, I'm going to have my x-intercept. Now, the last thing I need to do is write those as ordered pairs, okay? And it wouldn't hurt to label them. So the y-intercept is 0 and 2. And the x-intercept is negative 3 and 0. And there's number 10 done. Number 11, find the slope. And I've got 2 points. So I'm going to label the 5 and the negative 17. I'm going to label those as x1, y1. The 11 and negative 4 is going to be x2, y2. And then I need the slope formula, which is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then it's just a matter of doing a little plug and play. Y2 is negative 4 minus a negative 17 over x2, which is 11, minus 5. Remember that two negatives make a positive, so this is going to become plus. Negative 4 plus 17 is 13. 11 minus 5 is 6. And 13 over 6 will not reduce. And so we're going to leave it a fraction. That is our slope. And remember, slope is rise over run. And if I needed my rise and run, I've got that too. Okay, leaving it as an improper fraction leaves it in rise over run form. Number 12, find the slope. So I'm going to have to find the slope and the y-intercept as an ordered pair and then sketch the graph. Okay, super easy because this is a function. And since it's a function, I know that f of x means y. Notice that since y is by itself, this is slope-intercept form. So I know my slope, which is m, is the coefficient of x. There's my slope. And my y-intercept, which is the b, which is my constant, as an ordered pair, would be 0, 4. Remember, the y-intercept always has an x-coordinate of 0. And now that I know the slope and the y-intercept, it's going to be super easy to graph. All I've got to do is plot my y-intercept, and from that point, I need to rise and run. Remember, your slope is rise over run. How do I rise -1? Well, that means to go down 1 and then run 2. We're going to go down 1, run 2, and that'll get me to a new point. And now that I've got 2 points, I can play connect the dots. Super easy. Remember, the y-intercept is b and the slope is m. And so if I could give you that graphing technique as a poem, it says plot the b, rise and run, connect the dots, and then you're done. And now number 12 is done. Number 13, solve the system by substitution. Oh, or elimination. I can use either method, but I must show work. Well. You know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to use substitution because it's going to be super easy to get this x in the first equation by itself. So we're going to bring the 6y over, which makes it a -6y. And now I can substitute for x in the second equation what it's equal to. Okay, so -7 times x, but x is equal to -15 minus 6y. That I got that from the top equation. Plus 5y equals 11. And then we need to distribute and combine like terms. So what is -7 times -15? Well, if you're like me and you don't want to figure it out mentally, you can do it electronically. 7 times 15, 105. And I know it's positive because it's a negative times a negative makes a positive. And then -7 times -6, again, negative times a negative makes a positive. 42y plus 5y equals 11. The 105 is going to go to the other side, making it minus 105. And I'm going to combine my y's. 42y plus 5y, that's going to be 47y. What is 11 minus 105? Let's see. 11 minus 105. -94. And then to divide both sides by 47. And with any luck, that will divide evenly. -94 divided by 47. Hey, look at that. -2. Now remember, when you solve a system, what you're finding is the ordered pair that represents the intersection of the two lines. So we have y, now we need x. And that's going to be super easy because all I have to do is take this value for y, substitute it in here, and that will find x. So we're going to have x is -15 minus 6 times -2. Where did I get that from? I got it from this box right over here. Negative 15 plus 12. Negative 6 times negative 2 is a plus 12. Negative 15 plus 12 is negative 3. And that is my x. And then I need to write this as an ordered pair. Remember, the solution of a system is the point of intersection, so it needs to be an ordered pair. And so as an ordered pair, that would be x, comma, y. And that's number 13 done. Number 14, perform the indicated operation. Here we have polynomial subtraction. And so what we need to do is distribute that negative to every term and then combine like terms. The stuff in the first set of parentheses just comes down. It doesn't change. But then we're going to have plus 4 minus 7x to the 5th minus 8x to the 6th plus 4x to the 4th. When you distribute that negative, it is going to change all the signs. And then we need to combine like terms, starting with the biggest exponent first. And the biggest exponent I see is x to the 6th. We have 3 minus 8, which is negative 5x to the 6th. And those are done. Next biggest power, x to the 5th. Negative 7 and negative 2 is negative 9, x to the 5th. Next biggest power, x to the 4. And I see 2 of those. Negative 7 plus 4 is negative 3, x to the 4. And do you notice what I'm doing as I combine my like terms? I'm using a different symbol each time. And that does two things. That helps me identify that my like terms are correct, but it also helps me to keep from getting distracted by terms I've already dealt with. So now, as you can see, I'm left with the constants. Plus 6 and plus 4, those are the only terms left. 6 and 4 is 10, and now that answer is done. And now we're to the last problem in this part of the review. Perform the indicated operation. Remember, to square something means to multiply by itself. And so this is going to be a binomial times a binomial, which is the FOIL method. So first, 4x times 4x, that is 16x squared. On the outside, negative 44xy. On the inside, negative 44xy. Last but not least, we have a negative times a negative makes a positive. 11 times 11 is 121. Y times y is y squared. And then if you have like terms, you do need to combine them. So our final answer, simplified completely, is going to be 16x squared minus 88xy plus 121 y squared. And that is the answer in simplest form. And that's it for this part of the review. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave those in the comment section below, or you can text me. And thanks for watching.